6 Secrets you should never share with your family after 65. For a peaceful life, senior advice. Have you ever had the feeling that being too open with your family sometimes leads to more confusion than clarity? As we grow older, there's a natural desire to be completely honest with those closest to us, thinking that full transparency is the best way to stay connected. But the truth is, not everything needs to be shared. It's not about hiding things or creating distance. It's about wisdom, about knowing when silence protects your peace more than words ever could. Some matters, when kept private, don't create isolation. They create space for independence, self-respect, and emotional balance. In today's video, we're going to explore 6 things you may want to keep to yourself after turning 65. This isn't about secrecy. It's about learning how to avoid unnecessary pressure, maintain healthy boundaries, and live your later years with more freedom and less stress. And here's the surprising part. Choosing what not to say can bring you more peace than you ever expected. Stay with us until the end, because the final point might completely shift the way you relate to your family and to yourself. Now, let's begin with the first one. Comparing yourself to others. The smoldering flame of hurt. Have you ever sat alone, perhaps by the window with a warm cup of tea, and found yourself wondering why your life doesn't look quite like the ones you see around you? Maybe you've noticed your neighbor's children visiting every weekend, arms full of groceries and laughter, or a friend's grandchildren calling just to say hi. And in that quiet moment, a small thought creeps in. Why not me? It seems harmless at first, just a simple comparison. But over time, these thoughts begin to weigh heavily, like invisible stones in your heart. You start to wonder if you made mistakes, if you didn't love enough, save enough, do enough, and without meaning to, you begin to believe that your life, the one you've built with love, effort, and quiet resilience, somehow doesn't measure up. This kind of comparison, especially after 65, is one of the most silent and painful habits we develop. It doesn't yell or scream. It whispers. It doesn't motivate. It steals joy. According to Dr. Nancy Schlossberg, a renowned expert in aging psychology at the University of Maryland, this tendency to compare in later life often stems from a deep sense of losing control. As we step into retirement or experience physical changes, we sometimes look outside ourselves to see where we stand. But instead of helping, this only deepens the feeling of not being enough. And that feeling, if left unchecked, can affect not only your happiness, but also your relationships. Because when we say things like other people's kids are more successful, or I wish you were more like so-and-so, even if it comes from a place of disappointment or longing, it lands on the people we love as judgment. It builds walls, not bridges. It pushes them away instead of drawing them closer. Worse still, the more we compare, the more we shrink our own life down to a list of what we don't have, rather than what we do. The truth is, no family is perfect. No life is without its chapters of struggle. And yet, there is so much beauty in what you've lived through, in the quiet victories that don't make it onto social media or holiday cards. When you stop comparing and start appreciating the uniqueness of your path, something changes. You feel lighter. You feel more connected. You begin to see that your story, just as it is, has value. Peace isn't found in matching someone else's life. It's found in accepting and honoring your own. So now, I want to gently ask you, have you ever caught yourself saying something like, at your age, I already had my house paid off, or other people's children take better care of their parents? And when you did it leave you feeling stronger or lonelier? If this touches your heart in any way, I invite you to like this video so more people can find this message. Share it with someone who might need this gentle reminder. And in the comments, I'd love for you to reflect with me. What's one comparison you're ready to let go of for the sake of your peace? Because here at Golden Wise Elders, we're not here to compete. We're here to grow, to heal, and to live these next years with more freedom, more grace, and more love than ever before. Number 2 thing I want to tell you, there's something deeply personal about money. It's not just numbers in a bank account. It's security. It's freedom. It's the story of a lifetime of work. And yet, somewhere along the way, we were told that in the name of honesty, we should lay it all out. Tell our children how much we've saved, how we plan to spend it, what we'll leave behind. But let me ask you, has full transparency ever brought you more peace or more pressure? Let me take you to a quiet kitchen in upstate New York. Eileen, 72, was having coffee with her youngest daughter when she casually mentioned selling an old investment property. Something she had worked hard for, something she was quietly proud of. What followed wasn't celebration. It was curiosity, then concern, then unsolicited advice. Are you sure you should manage that money yourself? Shouldn't we talk about how you'll use it? Wouldn't it be better to give some now before taxes get worse? That one conversation shifted everything. Her daughter's tone changed. Her gaze became calculating, even if unintentional. Eileen told me later, I felt like I had accidentally invited someone into a room I wasn't ready to share. Here's the truth most people don't say out loud. When you reveal your financial details, you also reveal your vulnerabilities. And often, you lose something quietly powerful in the process. Your sense of control. Dr. Mark Locks, a renowned geriatrician at Weill Cornell Medical College, has spent decades studying how aging intersects with autonomy. He warns, financial transparency in older adults should be selective and strategic. Share only when it serves a clear purpose and with those who've earned your full trust. That's not secrecy, that's wisdom. Because once people know what you have, it can, even unintentionally, shift the relationship. Suddenly, you're no longer just mom or grandpa. You're an asset holder. You're a future estate. You become a topic in side conversations you're not even part of. Let's be clear. This isn't about assuming the worst in others. Most family members mean well. But human nature is complex. Money triggers emotion, from worry to entitlement to resentment, especially when inheritance is involved. And even if no one ever says it out loud, you'll feel it. The subtle change in tone, the questions laced with suggestion, the sense that your decisions are no longer solely yours. But here's the good news. You have the power to choose what you share and when. You're not obligated to explain how you spend your money, where you keep your accounts, or what you plan to leave behind. You can keep your peace by keeping some details private, not because you're hiding, but because you're protecting something sacred, your right to live the rest of your life on your own terms. Imagine the freedom of making a generous donation without being second-guessed, taking a trip without someone raising an eyebrow, buying something just for you without having to justify it. That is the gift of quiet ownership, and it's one you've earned. So I ask you, with no judgment, only reflection, have you ever noticed someone treating you differently after learning about your finances? Did it feel good, or did it make you shrink just a little inside? If this story speaks to you, even in a small way, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who might be walking the same road, and leave a comment. How do you balance transparency with independence in your life? Secret number 3, regrets from the past. It often starts quietly, a photo tucked in an old book, a familiar song on the radio, the smell of something that takes you back to a different time. And before you know it, the memories rush in. Some sweet, others laced with a lingering ache. After 65, those moments of reflection become more frequent, and with them, sometimes, comes regret. Regret is a natural part of aging. We think about choices we made, opportunities we didn't take, words we said, or never got the chance to say. It's human. But here's the tender truth. When we begin to speak those regrets out loud, especially to our children or grandchildren, we risk turning personal healing into someone else's hidden wound. There was a man named Charles, a retired school principal in Indiana. He once told his adult daughter over dinner, "I should have never stayed in that job. I wish I'd taken that offer in California. We could have had a better life." He said it with a sigh, more to himself than to her. But later she admitted it made her feel like their life together, the one she had loved, somehow wasn't enough. She couldn't stop wondering, was she the reason he stayed? Was she the source of his sacrifice? That's the unseen consequence of regret when shared without care. It gets misunderstood. What was meant as self-reflection can easily feel like blame. And the weight of your past, even unintentionally, can become someone else's emotional burden. Psychologist Erik Erikson, one of the most respected voices in the field of adult development, described the final stage of life as a time of integration. A time, he said, not for dwelling on what went wrong, but for making peace with what was. To reach a place of acceptance where your story, full of twists, triumphs, and turns, is embraced, not judged, and certainly not passed on as a shadow over someone else's joy. Because here's the powerful shift. When you hold your regrets gently, privately, they begin to soften. They no longer define you. They become part of your wisdom, not your weight. And when your children, your grandchildren see you not as someone filled with sorrow, but as someone full of strength, they learn how to carry their own past with grace too. It's okay to wish some things had been different, but not every wish needs to be spoken. Some healing happens in silence. And in doing so, you protect not just your peace, but theirs. So let me ask you now, quietly and honestly, is there something in your heart that you still regret, but have never known how to speak aloud? Something that lingers, not because you haven't moved on, but because you haven't fully forgiven yourself. If that resonates with you, I'd love for you to take a small but powerful step. Comment below with the words, "I'm learning to forgive myself." Let it be a quiet declaration, a step toward peace. And if this message brought comfort or clarity, please like this video. Share it with someone who may be walking the same path. And subscribe to Golden Wise Elders, where we believe that growing older is not about perfection. It's about permission. Permission to feel, to release, to begin again. Even now. Secret number 4. Minor health complaints. When too much sharing becomes a silent burden. It often begins with a small comment, one that feels harmless. "My knees have been aching a bit lately. I felt dizzy yesterday morning, but it passed. I didn't sleep well last night again." These little remarks are part of everyday conversation, especially as we age. They're not cries for help. They're simply life. But what happens when these passing thoughts are met with raised eyebrows, a flurry of concerned phone calls, or even talk of hiring help you never asked for? After 65, our bodies begin to whisper. They creak. They tire more easily. And yes, sometimes they ache. It's normal. But when we vocalize every whisper, we unintentionally invite others into a space they may not yet need to enter. And in doing so, we risk losing something incredibly precious, the perception of our independence. Let me tell you about Doris, a vibrant 6-to-6-year-old woman from Scottsdale, Arizona. One afternoon, during a casual phone call, she told her daughter, "I had a sharp pain in my back this morning, but it went away after I stretched." Within 48 hours, her daughter had contacted her siblings, scheduled a doctor's appointment without asking, and started researching assisted living communities just in case. Doris was stunned. What she had meant as a simple update, one of those daily little annoyances, became in her children's eyes a red flag. According to Harvard Health, while it's important to communicate critical health issues, constantly discussing minor symptoms can lead to what researchers call perceived fragility. In other words, your family may begin to see you not as capable and aging, but as declining and dependent. And the moment they start seeing you that way, they begin to treat you differently, with more caution, with more control, sometimes with more distance. It's a painful irony. We speak out to feel connected, and yet the response makes us feel smaller. That's why learning what to share and when is such a vital skill as we age. It's not about hiding things or being stoic to the point of suffering. No, it's about preserving dignity, about choosing to manage your health with intention, not fear. By tracking your symptoms, staying informed, and speaking with your doctor when necessary, you stay in the driver's seat of your own well-being. And when something truly matters, when your health requires help or support, you'll have the clarity and confidence to speak with strength, not hesitation. Imagine how different life feels when your family sees you not as fragile, but as strong and self-aware. When your calls aren't greeted with panic, but with calm respect. When your body becomes a part of your story, not the headline. Because you are not defined by your aches. You are not reduced to your symptoms. You are a full, rich living being, still growing, still learning, still in charge. So let me ask you now, gently, have you ever mentioned a small health issue, a sore joint, a dizzy spell, only to find your family suddenly overreacting, planning things for you, or treating you like someone who can no longer manage? If that sounds familiar, take a moment now to comment below and share your experience. Or if you found ways to communicate your health without losing your power, we'd love to hear that too. Secret number 5. Your true opinions about family conflicts. When silence says more than words, there's a particular weight that comes with age, not just in the body but in the heart. The longer we live, the more we see. The more we've learned about how people work, where grudges hide, and how fragile peace within a family can truly be. And often with the best intentions, we step in, offering our thoughts, our truth, our perspective, believing we might help. But what if sometimes saying exactly what you think does more harm than healing? Family conflicts are nothing new. A sibling disagreement, a misunderstanding between cousins, a dispute over parenting or money or inheritance. When you've lived long enough, you start to notice the patterns, how the same fights repeat, how history loops itself. And because you've been around, you might feel a responsibility to speak up, to offer clarity, to point out who's really at fault. But here's the thing. Even when your words come from a place of love, they don't always land that way. In fact, they rarely do. Let me tell you about Lorraine, an 80-year-old grandmother from Georgia. Her two daughters were in a bitter feud over a family vacation that went sideways. One blamed the other. Voices were raised. Calls stopped. Lorraine, hoping to mediate, told one of them, "Well, I do think your sister was a little selfish this time." That single sentence, spoken over tea, almost casually, burned a bridge she didn't see coming. Months passed before they spoke again. And even then, something had changed. The daughter never forgot that her mother had taken sides, because when families fight, emotions run hot. And when someone you love hears that you've chosen a side, even gently, they don't hear wisdom. They hear betrayal. Experts in family psychology often refer to this as inherited tension. According to Dr. Joshua Coleman, a senior fellow at the Council on Contemporary Families, when older adults intervene in family drama, their words carry more emotional weight than they realize. Parents and grandparents often become symbolic referees, he says, but the moment they declare a winner, they risk losing their role as safe, neutral ground. And when that happens, something sacred is lost. So what's the alternative? Practice what I call graceful distance. It's the art of being present without being pulled in. It's listening without leaning. It's saying things like, "I trust you'll work it out," instead of, "Here's what I think you should do." It's knowing that your silence isn't avoidance, it's protection. For them and for you. Because here's the truth no one tells you. When you stay neutral, you stay loved. When you offer space instead of solutions, you give your family the chance to grow on their own terms. And when the conflict passes, as most eventually do, you're still there, unchanged, untouched, a steady presence in a shifting sea. So now I want to ask you, with kindness and care, have you ever spoken your mind in a family disagreement, only to realize later that it did more harm than good? Have you ever wished you could take back a comment that came from your heart, but landed like a stone? If that resonates with you, I invite you to leave a comment below and share your experience. Or simply write, "I choose peace over opinions," and let that be your quiet commitment to preserving harmony. And if this message gave you something to think about, please like this video, share it with someone navigating their own family storm, and subscribe to Golden Wise Elders, where we believe that wisdom isn't always about speaking louder, but knowing when to stay still. Secret number 6, comparing yourself to others, letting go of the weight that was never yours. It's one of those habits that creeps in when we're not looking. We scroll through a friend's vacation photos, hear stories of someone else's perfect grandchildren, watch as a neighbor's children drop by with gifts, and we start to wonder, quietly, painfully, why not me? Comparison is a silent thief. It doesn't steal your money, your home, or your health. It steals your joy. And at this stage of life, joy should never be on the negotiating table. For many older adults, comparison becomes more frequent with age, and it's not hard to understand why. As our roles shift from parent to grandparent, from worker to retiree, the markers of self-worth that once defined us start to blur. And when we no longer feel seen or valued in the same ways, we look outward for validation. That's when the whispers begin. Their children call more often. They've saved more. They're in better shape. They've aged better than me. But here's the difficult truth. Those whispers don't inspire you. They quietly unravel you, Dr. Nancy Schlossberg, who has spent her career studying transitions in later life, says that comparison after retirement is often linked to a fear of invisibility. When we no longer feel needed in the same way, she notes, we start measuring our worth through others, and that's where the pain begins. And oh, how subtle that pain can be. It begins as longing, then becomes resentment, sometimes toward others, but often toward ourselves. We begin to see our lives not as unique stories, but as missed opportunities. We forget the love we gave, the storms we survived, the beauty we built in our own quiet ways. And worse still, when we verbalize those comparisons, even unintentionally, they can bruise the ones we love. Saying things like, "Your cousin's son visits his parents every Sunday," or, "At your age, I already had a house," may feel harmless, but to those on the receiving end, it can feel like a silent accusation, a wound that festers in silence. But what if we let it go? What if we stop measuring our life by someone else's ruler? What if instead of comparison, we practice compassion, starting with ourselves? Because the truth is, no one's journey is the same. Behind every smiling photo is a struggle you can't see. Behind every well-behaved child is a challenge you don't know. And behind every perfect life is a hidden loneliness just waiting for someone to understand. When you stop comparing, something extraordinary happens. You reclaim your story. You begin to see your path not as lacking, but as layered. You rediscover gratitude. You recognize that your value isn't determined by who visits you, how much money you have, or what others think. It's found in the quiet, steady heartbeat of a life lived sincerely. So let me ask you now, not to judge, but to reflect. Have you ever felt a moment of comparison rob you of your peace? And more importantly, are you ready to let that go? If you are, I invite you to comment below with the words, "I choose to value my own story." Let that be your declaration, not of where you've been, but of where you're going. If this message touched your heart today, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may be carrying the same weight, and subscribe to Golden Wise Elders, because here we don't compare, we celebrate, we don't compete, we connect, and we don't age in silence. We rise in wisdom together. And now, as we gently close this conversation, I want you to take one quiet breath, not for anyone else, but for you. You've just traveled through 6 powerful truths, 6 reminders that not everything needs to be shared to be real, to be felt, or to be respected. In this life, and especially after 65, wisdom is no longer about how much you say. It's about how well you listen to yourself. There is grace in holding certain things close to your chest. There is peace in knowing when to speak and when to simply smile and let the moment pass. Your finances, your health, your regrets, your family tensions, your comparisons, your quiet decisions, they are yours. Sacred, earned. You are not obligated to open every page of your life to everyone. You've written those pages in ink, with years of effort, love, loss, mistakes, and triumph. And now you get to choose how they're read and by whom. That choice is power. That silence is not weakness, it's mastery. And the more you honor that truth, the more you'll realize you don't need to be heard to be whole. You don't need to be understood to be wise. And you don't need to be like anyone else to be deeply, wonderfully enough. So today, choose peace over pressure. Choose privacy over pleasing. Choose your own well-being over old expectations. You have permission. You've always had it. If something in this message made you pause, made you breathe a little deeper, or think a little differently, I invite you to leave a comment below. Let us know, which of these 6 truths are you embracing in your life right now? If this video reminded you of someone, maybe a parent, a friend, or a fellow elder on this journey, please share it. Let it be a gift of gentle encouragement. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Golden Wise Elders. Because here, we're not just aging, we're awakening. We are rewriting the story of what it means to grow older, not with fear, but with fierce tenderness. You are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are a living, breathing testament to resilience. And your voice, even in its quietest form, still matters. So go gently, go proudly, and above all, go wisely. We'll see you in the next story.